Hello. So I've been wanting to record a second voice note for YouTube for like a week or so at this point, and I was traveling and just tired, so I wasn't really in the right headspace for it. Also, don't really have enough of my own space to like record consistently, so that makes things difficult. But here we are. My phone's at 25%. We'll see how far we get. One thing that's on my mind today is I just finished reading this book called Daddy Issues. Forget the name of the author, but it was basically like a single dad romance story, which typically isn't really my zhuzh, but I liked the first chapter. I liked the person's writing style. I think her name's Kate something. I like the writing style. And it was interesting because in the context of the book, I resonated way more with just like the main character's overall experience as opposed to the romance of it all, because the main character essentially is in her like mid to late 20s and is living at home because post pandemic during the pandemic she lost a opportunity to travel and do a fellowship program for like her art program, and so she's like living at home in her mom's office on like a small futon, and essentially like, yeah, it's like this failure to launch type story, which I thought was interesting because I remember there's this one movie with Matthew McConaughey called Failure to Launch, I think. And that's like the only time I really could remember engaging with this concept in the media. But then I was reflecting on my own life and I was like, oh, I guess maybe I do qualify to some extent as a failure to launch. And I don't think other people would qualify me this way because I have like got a master's and like moved out of my parents' house and stuff. But I think in terms of the way that I envision the trajectory of my life, I am definitely not where I thought I would be, where I wanted to be. And so it was interesting to read a book where there's this character moving through that transition of like being so attached to having their life look one particular way and having to, I'll see what I deal with. What the fuck was that? Anyway, it's just like we're gonna lovely. We're accepting that there isn't a perfect time to do all the things. It's okay. That kind of proved my point. It's like it was interesting because the way that she kind of like resolved how she was feeling about the state of her life had very little to do with the man, which I appreciated because I think that's how it should be, and had more to do with her recognizing that like she didn't need, not to spoil the whole story, but essentially, I guess this is a spoiler if you do want to read the book, but essentially like realizing like she didn't need one magic bullet situation or solution to like fix all of her problems. Like she could start more gradually, and I found that very affirming because I do think there's this idea that if your life isn't going the way that you wanted to or thought it should, like there's specific markers that you have to hit to indicate that you're going in the right direction. And that's just not realistic. Life is very complicated, and you never know which particular domino is going to be the one that creates the ripple effect that you need to get on the right path. And I think also like there are just so many people whose life missions and purposes cannot be accomplished by them approaching it in a linear way. Like we have to, I think some people are just inherently like late bloomers, are meant to mature later in life, are meant to achieve success in a later period of life. And I wish that that was more discussed and more accepted as truth as opposed to like an outlier, because I think you spend the whole time feeling so self-conscious and like negatively about yourself for not having the same path as everyone else, whereby you're just like on the path that was designed for you. Even from like a astrological perspective, like if you have certain Saturn placements, because Saturn is a planet that deals with boundaries and structure and time, if you have certain Saturn placements in specific areas of your chart, that could indicate parts of your life that are just going to take longer to fully manifest because they're maturing in a way that allows for longevity. And I don't want to talk about my own birth chart too much on the interwebs, but for example, like if you had Saturn in your sixth house, for example, that could speak to one, just being really disciplined and structured in terms of how you approach your work life and your routines, but it could also lead to having a career that just requires time to build, as opposed to your first job being the only job that you do and you're successful at it right off the bat. You know, like there's just some aspects of life that like take more time to like mature and develop. And I think for me, I've just been in this like very, very deep healing incubator almost for my 20s. And I know that that is going to lead to like whatever success I do have, having more staying power. But I wish someone had told me that sooner, because I think I spent so much of my Saturn return and my late 20s like feeling like I was doing something wrong, and then particularly dealing with the impact of the pandemic on top of that. I just felt like so many things that used to be easier for me became harder because I wasn't masking my neurodivergence anymore, because I wasn't trying to push myself past my capacity, because I was recovering from burnout and didn't want to burn out again. And you know, when you're navigating life in the context of capitalism and trying to do it slower and more thoughtfully and more intentionally, like you're inherently going to feel like you were going slower than everyone around you. So yeah, I've just been reflecting on that today, and I guess I just wanted to talk about that in case anyone else feels similar, because yeah, I don't think we talk about it enough, but there's so many young adults who still have to live at home because the economy's trash and it's so hard to get a good paying job, let alone a good paying job that keeps up with the cost of living. And even if you have a good job, that good job might wear you the fuck out to the point that you have no desire to explore any hobbies or do anything with your friends or anything. Like, it's just, there's very few pathways right now in the way that our society is structured that allows for people to live fulfilling and abundant lives. And I don't feel like we should take on the stress and burden of that on our own and feel like we are just doing something wrong, you know? And I think even with perfect circumstances, life is still not easy. Life is not linear. My battery's low today. But yeah, even in perfect circumstances, like life is still not linear. And I think being able to accept that and work with that instead of feeling so like, what's the word? Challenged by it, or like having an adversarial relationship with it, I think is not super conducive to just being a human. Like my energy work teacher always says, like, being a human is hard. And I internalize that on a regular basis. Like, if you got up today and showered and fed yourself and got to a meeting on time, like, you're doing great. Like, all the other stuff, it's just a bonus if you're able to move other aspects of life forward. And ultimately, like, what is for you is not going to miss you. And I think just recognizing that you're only one part of the puzzle, and there are other things that have to be arranged for you to show up in the world the way that you're meant to, also takes a little bit of the pressure off. But yeah, so just practicing being more vulnerable about how I'm feeling, which feels very physically uncomfortable, which is so interesting to me, because when I was in my earlier 20s, I was writing on a blog, and I was just putting my business out there, and I really didn't care. And I think I need to reflect more on, like, what were the circumstances around that particular time of my life that made it easier for me to share my perspective. I mean, I still do in the form of my newsletter more so. I think doing it via video is like a different level of vulnerability, because then I'm thinking about, like, well, how do I look? How do I sound? Is the background giving? You know, all those things. And I think I can be a perfectionist about that from, like, an artistic lens. So maybe that's why. But yeah, I was just thinking about it yesterday, and I was like, wow, there was really, like, I think people now think that I'm brave, but I'm like, I'm comparing myself to younger me, because there's just a level of, like, fearless that I had about different things at different stages of my life that I'm like, I don't necessarily feel like I have. But then I think vice versa. There are other things that I've probably done that I think younger me would be like, you did what? How? Where? You know, so yeah, it'll be a shorter video if I end up posting this. But I hope that was helpful, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, like, yeah, navigating young adulthood with the way the world is set up currently, and, you know, if you identify with this idea of being a failure to launch, or like what that implies. Because I don't. I think if I had launched the way that I thought I was gonna launch, I would have burned myself out to a degree that would have been very hard to recover from, and I think I wouldn't be the version of myself that I need to be for what is to come. And so I'm just trusting the universe. And at the same time, like, I think it's normal to grieve the life that you thought you would have under different circumstances, with different tools, with different support, etc. Like, both of those things can coexist, and they both belong. So yeah, I just want to yap a little bit before I sketch and whatnot, and doodle. But thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you whenever the next voice note happens. Okay, bye.